James Lipton's Inside, Chapter 6, page 140. Besides, the entire episode nearly popped out in, of all places, the classroom of Inside the Actor's Studio when Julia Roberts was our guest, and I asked her whether she'd gone to the sources in her preparation to play the street-walking prostitute in Pretty Woman. Yeah, she said emphatically. Where? Hollywood. Talk with them? Yeah. Were they nice? Oh, yes. Very. Horrible, horrible stories, but fascinating girls. And they were really nice to me and told me a lot of things, and it was incredibly helpful. A lot of the things that they said to me, we ended up incorporating in the script, so it was really valuable time spent. One of the writers on this script was a woman named Barbara Benedict, whom I sat down with and at length went over the stories I'd heard and conversations I'd had, and she put a lot of it in the script. Then I took the fatal step. Once upon a time, for reasons that will not be shared tonight, I did some research also on the subject of prostitution. This was in Paris, and I couldn't continue. Julia jackknifed in her chair, and the students exploded into what may have been the loudest and most sustained laughter in the history of the show. Taken aback and reminding myself that I was the student's dean, I added hastily, "It's not what you think." It didn't help. The laughter redoubled, and Julia threw herself back in her chair, convulsed. I tried joining the joke with a lame, "It's worse." It didn't help. I could barely be heard over the tumult as I tried to turn the debacle in an academic direction. But what I did learn was gales of laughter persisted. I persisted with what I hoped was an effective disclaimer. This was a long time ago, before drugs and disease had turned everything so horrible, but I learned that I couldn't hear myself in the uproar. More than a little angry now, I gritted my teeth and plodded on. I learned that Julia was trying to quell her laughter with some water, and the microphone was picking up her teeth chattering on the rim of the glass. Nothing would deter me. I learned that the horrors I knew in Paris were, that was it, the students went mad. For reasons unknown to me to this moment, I persisted. "Now, come on, I'm going somewhere with this." The students stamped their feet in glee, and Julia dipped her fingertips into the glass to splash water on her crimson face. They were the most businesslike people I ever knew, I yelled over the hubbub. The only thing they very seldom did on the job was enjoy themselves. They saved all their money, and I'll bet you $5, Julia, that when you talked to these women in Hollywood, they were also saving and they had goals. Trying to help me out, Julia muttered, through tightly compressed lips, and the students' laughter rolled on unabated. Grabbing the lifeline Julia had thrown, I said, "Usually they're very specific. A beauty shop, right?" Or I was running on empty again. So pitching in valiantly, Julia offered, "In fact, I was going to say that, but I felt I was going on too long with that little topic. But they all had very specific goals for the future, and it was absolutely going to be theirs." Under the mistaken impression that I was out of the woods, I reached back and called on Regine to rescue me. I knew one woman who bought only one dress a year. She went to Balenciaga or Dior and had a beautiful dress made for Easter for church. It was the only expense she allowed herself in the whole year. I looked helplessly at the cackling students. That's the truth. The room exploded in new waves of laughter, and I slumped back with a beaten, getting a lot of laughs I didn't intend. So the matter ended on the stage, but it has remained one of the mysteries of Inside Actor Studio, raising occasional conjecture among students and even letter-writing viewers. Julia and I have never had occasion to discuss it, but, Julia, in the event you read these pages, now you know. So for better or for worse, does everybody else. For some reason that I don't pretend to understand, that time with Regine and in the circle at the station persists. In the late 60s, when the world and I were removed by what I thought were light years from the Bicale of Regine and Mickey and me, I arrived in Paris to propose a project to Peter Ustinov. One of my closest friends was a young woman named Nina Georges Picot, whom I'd met with her sisters Flore and Olga when their father was the French ambassador to the United Nations. Now in Paris, at dinner with Nina and her family on the Avenue Foch after a day of meetings with Ustinov, I choked on my beefsteak as Nina exclaimed impulsively, "Poppy, did you know that Jim was a mech?" The remark eradicated any other topic at the table, and when the evening ended I found myself yielding out of sheer exhaustion and with profound misgivings to the three sisters' entreaties to throw a party for all of my French friends in my old haunt. Fully expecting that the statute of limitations had run out, and I'd find a McDonald's at our Pigalle headquarters, I showed up to discover that the train was still running in the station, and that the bar and its contemporary inhabitants were in fact available for hire in toto on a normally slow night. Trapped by the fact that a gleeful Nina was hopping up and down at my side, I booked the station de metro and the pools, and Nina rushed home to send out a blizzard of invitations. I invited some American friends who were in Paris at the moment, and on the appointed night what looked to me like le tout Paris showed up. There was a liberal sprinkling of counts and countesses, and at the vortex of the affair, standing head and shoulders over the other guests, Nina's father, Ambassador Guillaume Georges Picot, inexplicably dressed as if for a diplomatic reception, standing tall and ramrod straight with a polite smile on his face, and a champagne glass held delicately between thumb and forefinger, as the pools circled him with undisguised curiosity. My instructions to the patron had been hors d'oeuvres and champagne served by the fees, and no hanky-panky under any circumstances. The purpose of this evening, I stressed, was not sexual, it was social. I'd pay for the pool's time as if they were delivering the usual product, and fully compensate the hotel for the non-use of the rooms upstairs. But, I insisted, my guests were to be offered nothing, repeat nothing, but food and drink. Since the remuneration was equivalent to any other night at the establishment without the usual wear and tear on the merchandise, the patron was only too happy to comply. I was greatly relieved to find that the party was going off without a hitch. My guests, French and American, were intrigued by their surroundings, and not a bit patronizing toward the young women who were serving them with fastidious, if slightly starchy, refinement. Thanks to Nina, Flora, and Olga's insistence, I'd brought off the nearly impossible coup, a Parisian party with an entirely novel theme. My fear that I would be indelibly tarnishing my reputation vanished. I'd forgotten. This is Paris. These people are French. All around me I could see admiring glances, and Flora Georges Picot, who was a ravishing teenager, hugged my arm, emitting squeals of ineffable joy.